Hi there, my name's Jill Tiny. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learned an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hi there, and welcome to Being Human, Hidden Depths. This is the podcast where we find out about one of our members at Collaboration Global. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Selena Boshorin. Welcome, Selena.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I was about to say welcome there. No, I will.
Loving the background as well. For those of you that are listening to us and not seeing, listening to us and not seeing the video, which is also available on our YouTube channel. Selena's a great one for colour. So she's got a beautiful bright red brick wall behind her, and if you look at her profile on LinkedIn, she's got a fabulous bright yellow dress. So she's always got this shock of colour going on around her, and usually, as you can see in the video, if you're watching on video, beautiful purple bits in the hair as well, which I quite like. Anyway, I digress. As part of Collaboration Global, obviously you've been a member for a little while now. You were able to come to our event back in June. We were very excited about that. What are your thoughts around, let's see, I don't want to talk necessarily about the community as such, but what are your thoughts around collaboration? What drew you to Collaboration Global, and what are your thoughts now around what the potential is for collaboration?
Really, really good question. I think collaboration is essential, first of all. We do a lot of things where we're by ourselves and it's about competition. And that was one of the things that really drew me to Collaboration Global and really is exciting. I think that especially in the business world, it isn't about competition. It's not about pitting people against each other, but it's the fact that you can have brilliant people. Everyone's got their own expertise, but can still equally dwell, work, and be in the same space. And I think that's what we need in the world. It isn't, we all build our individual empires and we compete and fight. But as I said, we can still all be brilliant, but we can still work together and bring our strengths.
Yeah, you hear so much nowadays, don't you, about these toxic environments, and whether it's the corporate world or a larger company. I heard a little while ago about a boardroom meeting where they were asking for, let's put some ideas together, let's throw in new ideas in the middle of the table. But you knew that the marketing person didn't want to throw their idea into the table because the salesperson would probably pick up and run with it because they were quite bolshy and they kind of took over. And then that would be their idea would be gone. And then if there was the promotion, then that person might get the promotion and I wouldn't. And it's like, whoa, the politics that are in these small rooms that are stopping innovation, stopping creativity. And it's like, wow, grow up. But at the same time, you can perfectly see that they're protecting themselves. And there's part of me that goes, yeah, I would probably do the same in that environment. It's really crazy that how much is being stunted when we could be open and trying to try and find new ways. Have you come across anything in your world, in your life, in the businesses where you look at them and like, you're crazy? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, I think it's also that, but then also the other thing I've come across as well is people literally, as you were just alluding to, copying other people and trying to do the same thing. So they stop any individuality and sort of any growth of anyone. So different small businesses realizing that this person's doing this, so I'm going to do this as well, and as you said, it's sort of not recognizing our own growth. It's not recognizing our own skills. When we're so focused on what other people are doing as well, it's difficult.
Well, especially if you look over to the grass where it seems to be greener,
Yeah,
and you see people are doing do A plus B equals C. So you go,
yeah.
oh, I'll do A plus B equals C. And quite often you shell out a load of money to the
Mm-hmm.
person living next door to be taught how to do A plus B equals C,
Frequency. Yeah.
and it doesn't work for you. And you're like, well,
No.
I must be doing something wrong. It must be me. Rather than looking at, well, they did that 10 years ago and the world is a different place now. They did that with a different market to mine. And they've got a product and I don't have this product and whatever it is. And I don't know about you, but I kind of get frustrated with the people that are, um, buy my tin of goodies. This does what it says on
Yeah.
the tin. And it's like, "Ugh." And you have to be um, brave enough
Mm.
or stupid enough, I don't know, to kind of go, I'm going to do it my own way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I like what you do, because you've got that magic word on your profile. If you look at LinkedIn, strategist. And that's for me as a business coach, I'm not when I work with people, I work on their communication and the strategy, although it is part of that, it kind of scares me slightly because there's a bit of detail going in there and I have to think about it a little bit. Oh my goodness. So if you've got into a company now, let's get down and dirty. If companies are listening to this, people that are either one-man bands or maybe you've got a small workforce, and Selena comes into your office and you say, we've got a problem. What sort of problems do you come across that you would go, you haven't got the strategy in place?
So, a couple of different things. Some of it might be if you've got a leadership or a CEO or someone that's kind of there at the top and they are working far too hard, and maybe they have got other people or they haven't, and they haven't quite worked out, okay, well, they're not doing a lot or anything, and
Yeah.
I'm doing everything. How do I sort of start to pass on, but still keep kind of the process, the foundation working? Then the other thing will be again around sort of areas around growth. So things seem like they're stuck, things seem like they're not moving, it's not exciting anymore, it's not inspiring. That again is another kind of indication that there are parts of the process, the strategy that kind of need to be looked at, but then also re-going back to sort of like your vision, your why you're doing things as well. So it's kind of that twofold. The other thing I would say about kind of how I work with strategy is that it's not supposed to be like a dead formula. You know, how I see it, kind of again, just thinking about what you were saying in the beginning, is that it comes from what is your bigger picture? What's your aim? What's your desire? What do you want to do? Which then makes it very bespoke, individual, creative, and fun and gives it the life. Then it's about taking kind of that big, massive vision that you have, and like we said, working backwards with that detail, putting the structure, putting that process in place. So it's like, this is what I want to achieve, this is where I am. And then what are the steps now that you can go back to then make that big vision? And having again structure, strategy, process, although they seem like, as I said, they're words that seem dry or whatever, but actually they give life to that creativity. You have some things that give you consistency, you have some things in place that give you quality because you've got those steps in place and give you that space, I think, to reflect, to think, to pause, while being able to have all that genius and have those things out in the world. So they would be definitely a couple of things. And to kind of put it back to your question as well, it might also be, again, issues around balance. So in terms of, there's no such thing necessarily as life, but how do you exist in the world doing other things and how do you do the business kind of that you do? So those are kind of the core things. I'm spending too many hours, I haven't got enough time, I feel like I'm stuck on this.
Mm.
I spend all my time doing all of those kind of words are some of the things that I would kind of look at as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You can kind of see that if you haven't got your why in place, then all the strategies in the world aren't going to make a lot of difference until you understand that. And quite often you say to people, why do you do this? And they're like, to make lots of money. And you're like,
Fine, fine.
not quite the answer that we really need. And I think a lot of people get hung up on this big utopia why, to make the world a better place. And yeah, that should be what we're all working towards. But I think it is just as valid to say, to keep my head above water over the next 6 months while we go through a potential recession and inflation and all the other things as well. And it's sometimes it's just keeping your sanity going, and that involves all the questions that you've just said. You know, what's your balance, and what control have you got? And do you think the problems you're coming up against now with your clients are the same as they were pre-pandemic, or do you think we've got a different view of life now?
Yes and no, they are both the same and they're different at the same time.
Mm,
I think the core elements have always been the same, but the reason that we're looking at them now is almost more important. And it seems to be kind of more, thinking about balance, thinking about growth, thinking about sort of delegation is more important almost now because it also relates to our mental health. It
mm,
makes to it relates to our well-being, finance and all of those things, having the right people in place is almost like more of a matter of urgency. And we're talking about it, we're feeling about it. The issues are kind of coming up more, I think, than we ever have. So I think a lot of the things were very similar before, but I think the urgency, how we're looking at it, is much more different. And I think people are feeling less guilty for thinking about their mental health, for thinking about what's going to give me balance,
yeah,
for having time off.
yes,
Whereas I think, particularly when I think of when I first started business in the online space, maybe the last sort of 4 or 5 years, we had that hustle culture. That was what we were all kind of almost aspiring to be. It was like what was shown as the way to be.
mhm,
Whereas we've gone through a period with the pandemic, just with reflection, and a lot of people have been burnt out as well. So
yeah,
it's like it's okay to say, actually, I don't want to be that way. Whereas, especially like I said, in the online business, we had a lot of things around business had to look like this, you had to be like this. That was how it was. And we went through a stage where we were kind of, some of us, we didn't like it, but it was like, okay, this is what we have to do. And
mhm,
is it okay that I admit that I don't really like this anymore? But now it's kind of come to the other end where it's like, actually, no, we don't like this. That is not the way to be. It served us and we did it for a time, maybe without realizing we don't have to do it. Now let's find a different way. And especially, like I said, when people come into business, a lot of people, it's because you've got a passionate, because you're really, inspired by something. Then you've gone through that hustle stage, as I said, and now it's like,
mm.
no, let me find something better. I don't have to be like that anymore. I
Yeah,
don't have to be kind of, whatever perception where that is. I don't have to be hustle. Let me find my own thing. So I think the ownership and the way that we're having conversations is definitely different from how it used to be. But yeah, we're finding, I think, the articulation of it more now as well.
that is interesting. I was coaching somebody yesterday, and the company that she worked for, we went through their vision statement and their purpose and all that kind of thing. And amongst all of the behaviors that they expect and anticipate, there wasn't any mention at all about mental health. And
Mm,
then as you carry on the conversation with her, you realize that it's a very toxic environment that she is part of. And it's like, wow, how do you survive going in every day when it's like
mm,
that? And I think now she's getting an awareness, because exactly what you just said, that because of the pandemic, we now are aware that we need to have, space from the computer. We need to get outside to get fresh air. We need to be physically moving and keeping an eye on our body. But also, most importantly, out of everything, our mental good health is imperative for any role, whether you're a one-man band business owner, probably more so if you're on your own, but also if you're part of a corporate world, you cannot
mm,
function effectively. So there's an awful lot of corporates that are paying an absolute fortune for staff who are keeling over with stress and anxiety
mhm,
and not showing up for work. And
mhm.
they're having to deal with the fallout because they haven't put a priority on good mental health. It's I think that's a pandemic that's happening at the moment. It's the silent pandemic, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
This feeling of isolation where people feel like they can't say anything. because, they might get fired or not approved for
Yeah.
a promotion, all of those kind of things, just because they're suffering from this anxiety or this stress that they can't deal with. It's it's a situation that I imagine many business coaches are going to be coming up against in the next sort of few years, as more and more people realize that they need some support and some help, to get out there. Um, so you talk about growth strategies. I love the phrase on your LinkedIn profile. How does one become a butterfly? Do you want to answer your question? Because it's on there, but go on, I'll leave you to answer it.
Yeah, I think when we think about growth, I think this is another thing. When we talk a lot about the other stage, when we get to where we want to be, where we are, and it's all wonderful and it's great and
Mm.
it's all like roses. But what we don't often talk about is that process in the middle. And
Yeah.
that is the thing, especially, kind of I talk about leadership quite a bit. That's the bit that needs a lot of attention, I think. You know, we're around here and we're not growing and we're in our comfort zone. It's perfect. And we want to get to there and it's all wonderful. But it's this stage where it's about the stretching and it's about the uncomfortableness and about the having to put ourselves forward and go through fears. I have that often myself and a lot of my clients do. And there might be tasks that, even for example, common things that we all do, like visibility, like having to do some social media, do live,
Yeah. Yeah.
have, as a leader, having different conversations, whether it's team members, having to tell a team member, actually, you want to do that thing, but actually you can't. Your behavior is correct. Having to have all of those conversations,
Mm.
going through, again, I see a lot of organizations going through change. And you, as an individual, in your comfort zone capacity, might want to turn around and say, I don't like this change, this organization, it's awful, and have a tantrum. But
Yes.
actually, you as a leader, because you're working with your team, you need to be the one to motivate and inspire them. And it's like that is a growth in itself.
Mm.
Having to sort of think, okay, well, how am I going to stand in front of these people, deliver this message that's really difficult, and still get people to work and do what they need to do?
Mm.
I can see why this thing is difficult. I can see why it's awkward. And I can kind of, but at the same time, this is what we need to move forward. It
Mm.
could be even thinking about things like, the landscape is changing again, charities funding. So there's more expectation to have written things, to have procedures, to have reports, to have delivery, to have tangibles. Whereas before, we could be in the education world, we could be in the charity world, we could be in school, and we could just be loving and talk about how much we love people. And it's all great. But the world requires us to have systems, to have
Yeah.
processes, to put things in writing. And you, as a leader, might be like, I don't like this and I don't agree. But to some degree, because this is the environment that we are now in,
Mm.
we have to comply with those things. So it's sort of like that level of growth between this is what I want personally, and this is what I have to be. And it's not talking about faking it or lying or any of that, but it's that growth journey between, right, I've got to work with people. This is me in my role as a leader. This is who I now am embodying. This is where I want to be. And
Mm.
that process that we have to take to do that. It could also be, someone upsets us, and our natural reaction might be, I'm just going to shout and tell them. But actually, you as a leader needs to know that you need to pause, you need to step back because it's not right. Or the time where actually you might want to hold back, and my old self was holding back, but actually myself as a leader needs to say something.
Yeah.
So it's that the emotional stuff kind of that we go through to get to the nice and rosy, but
Yeah.
also to leave that comfort and what we're used to and what we're familiar with as well.
Well, it's so true of nature in itself, because if you think about the butterfly when it gets to that stage, and it's in caterpillar to chrysalis to butterfly. There's been documented evidence that if somebody tries to help the butterfly get out of chrysalis, their wings are not strong enough to be able to fly, because it's been, oh, let's make it easier for you, I'll take the
I know.
chrysalis off and then you can
Oh,
fly. Actually, no, you need the struggle to build up the strength to get onto the next stage so you can fly.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
every area of life is like that, whether you're a 4-year-old going to big school, or
Hmm.
whether you're starting your first job, there's gonna be bits of it that are like, "Oh, I don't wanna do this."
That's it.
But you have the growing.
Just sit here.
Yeah, I don't wanna do that when you're 22 and you're like, "I don't wanna go and get a job."
No.
But it's just the same as first day at school, you know, you've gotta go through the pain barrier to get the benefits out the other end.
Yeah.
That's where this thing about, leadership now, that is a growing trend, around vulnerability.
Mm.
And there's there's two schools of thought because some people interpret vulnerability as crying into your camera and putting it on social media. I don't know if you saw a post on LinkedIn about this guy took a photo of himself crying and saying how awful he felt. He's heartbroken because he's had to, and he was aiming for the sympathy vote. You know, he wanted people to click on and sympathise, and he got the total opposite because the reason he was crying is because he'd had to lay off 100 members of staff. And it's like, not wrong time to be vulnerable, mate, because you still got a job and they don't have any job. You know, this is not what you should be posting about. And he was lambasted, you know, totally.
Mm.
Why would you take a photo of yourself crying? I just, you know, this selfie, it was very weird and it backfired miserably. Whereas if you throw the vulnerable card and say to people, look, we're in for a tough ride. I don't know how it's going to go, but this is my plan and I'm going to be with you every step of the way. I think this is going to work, but I'm interested in your input as well. Together we can do this. That's allowing you to go, I don't know how it's going to work out. You know, hands up, I'm feeling a bit out of my depth, but
Hmm.
together we can do it. And that's the kind of vulnerability that is being applauded around um, the likes of Simon Sinek and Brené Brown and people like that who acknowledge that leadership as it was, top down, command control, I'm in charge, you do as I say, where you're expected to have all of the answers. And if you were to turn around and go, I don't know, then, oh my goodness, why are you leading? You should be gone, go away. But actually, now you're allowed to go, not really sure, but what about this? And what do you think? And should we do this? And let's try this thing. Because when we might not know all of the answers, and nobody does,
Oh, and he
but
said,
but with collaboration, you know, and that's my whole thing about collaboration. There's solutions out there already. And if enough people come together, you'll work it out. You'll find a way to find a solution. It might not be the perfect solution, but it will definitely be a solution to move you forward. Where if
yeah,
you're on your own trying to go, I'm in charge, I'm going to do this, you know, you're going to fall over. You're going to, you know, make yourself look silly at some point because you're trying to be all things to all people. And
yeah,
that's
no,
a,
definitely. I remember some years, so maybe about 10 years ago, actually, maybe a bit less than that. I remember I worked in a training center, and I remember one of the things that I think it was the administrator told me, it was like, when you're training the group, if you don't know the answer, just say a strong yes. Doesn't matter whether you know or don't. If
oh,
you say a strong yes and you tell them, they will believe you.
oh
And I
no.
was just sort of like, what? And then I remember someone asked me a question about, I think it was about the qualification. And I generally didn't know. It was about, what was it? It was construction. And there was
Yeah,
two different types of qualifications. Obviously, I can't turn around and be like, oh, it's strong. Yes, I know. So I was literally like, look, you know what? I don't actually know which one would get you into this, but you know what? Let me do a little bit of research and I'll come back to you.
yeah,
And I remember the guy I told that to, I was probably sort of like late 20s, and he was sort of in his 50s and been in, so he was off that school of thought as
yes,
well. And he
yeah,
went to complain to that result. She told me that she didn't know when she would find out. And I was just like, so what do you want me to do? Tell me the wrong answer?
yeah.
Like, I'll just tell you the strong yes. Oh, I would expect her to just say it. And it was just sort of like,
Wow. That is,
nah,
oh, how many people have tripped up with that one then? What advice?
I know.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Now with social media, politicians are still trying to be right all the time. And social media is like calling them out left, right, and center. And it's like, just admit you'll go and find out. Or you think it's this, but you're not, you can't be expected to know everything. And whilst you can be prepped to a certain extent, why are we lambasting our politicians? Because they don't have all of the answers. When
That's
that's why you have a whole department to go and find out for you, so you can
Well, this
find
is
out.
it.
And
If I don't know, I'll find the person that does know, or I'll find out the answer myself.
mm.
I want to know everything.
It's not naive to think that, we don't expect people to know everything. I mean, they're going to know a lot, and they should know a lot, and they should know the basics for sure, but they don't have to know something that was a paper that was published yesterday that was 150 pages and they haven't got around to reading it all yet, or even reading it all, digesting it all, and being able to verbalize it and regurgitate it. So why do the newspapers or the media then just lambast them for, not, oh well, obviously a terrible politician because they didn't know what was on page 3, subsection 7, blah 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 blah. It
But I
does.
think it goes with this sort of image that we've got, isn't it, about sort of what leadership is about, and it's that I that's pompous I know everything and I've got it all and then no, I don't need anyone else. And it's just me and
Mm,
my like whoa. And if you don't, if you think of other people, if you and I think conversely as well, I've come into contact with people that think they can take advantage
mm,
because you're not a leader that's like, it's my way, be quiet. I'm going to tell you what to do.
yeah.
And they're almost like, hey, this is my opportunity to like show you how great I am. And it's like,
Yes.
actually, no. And you have to just sort of remind them that actually, like, I do know what I'm talking about. However, we're not in that sort of image of how things are. And just because I'm not, on you 24/7 doesn't now mean you get that opportunity to like
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And when you look back at the way it used to be, I can imagine in a factory or some production line or some of the huge industries we've had, that would be an effective way of getting your work, the best out of your workforce. Not the happiest
Yeah,
way,
no.
and that's why I think Cadbury's and Bourneville were so successful when they transformed the working lives of their staff, because they gave them some sanitation and clean places to live. But it was still a tough world to be part of, and if you had a job, you still did as you were told. That was the order of the day. And I think to a certain extent, if you are lucky to be employed, and you're happy in your job, then you want to kind of make sure that you are grateful and demonstrate that, but without working your fingers to the bone, and being allowed to have an opinion and being allowed to make suggestions and share ideas, even if you're the cleaner. Somebody will see something that you haven't, that the leader, the person in charge, the person where the buck stops, maybe hasn't seen.
Mhm.
So why would you not be interested in what they had to say? I've known my goddaughter, from the age of 6. She's had some incredible insights into life, and you're like, wow, if you were going to be prime minister, I'd vote for you. She's only 11 at the minute. Maybe she's not quite there yet, but it's that kind of clarity of thought that some people have that cuts through all the noise and all the mess that goes on. And you feel like if there was no blame and no stories around people feeling self-righteous and worthy of your attention, then we would actually get so much more done, and we would have so many more solutions to the problems that are out there. Um, Leadership needs to change, I think, and we are moving the tanker slowly in the right direction, but it does take a long time to shift. Who are you following, that you would go, do you know what, brilliant leader, that bloke or that woman or that person, that they're just, I love how they deal with things in the global sphere. Who would you point to as like a great example of leadership?
Oh, that's a really good
I've put you
question.
on the spot,
Yeah,
haven't
put me on the
I?
spot.
Sorry, this was not
I
written down
think
in the notes, folks.
no, it wasn't. I think I tend to look at individuals. Obviously, we've got all the names like Simon Sinek and all these work.
Yeah.
Um, but I think also a lot of it for me comes down to the individual truths that people talk about. So while there's not necessarily sort of individual names I really kind of could say other than, you know, but I think it's looking at how people exhibit in their daily life. So
mm,
some of it might be people I've come across personally, sort of within industry, and how they demonstrate kind of the right things as well. But
mm,
also how people have, as you were saying, deal with things that are challenging, I think, as well, and just looking at how those conversations and how people navigate those difficult times, that those people for me are, kind of good role models in terms of when it comes to leadership. So yeah, that's
mm.
what I would say about that.
Mm. It's interesting, isn't it, that an off the cuff question, and
Mm.
both of us kind of, I don't know, but I was going, who's a good leader? Who's good? Why have we got none that just spring to mind immediately?
I know.
You go through politics, it's like, no, no, not really, no, no, I can't think
There's
of
a
it.
there's a distinct lack of
It's tragic, isn't it?
talent out
Although
there.
my first go to is New Zealand's Prime Minister. I
Yes,
think she's
yeah,
really
I
cool.
do have to. Yeah, that's true. Actually, as we're thinking about.
And is it Finland as well, if that's a lady? She's
Yes,
young, isn't
who's
she? And
yeah,
she
caught up in the fun at the moment, isn't she? About being old.
going
Yeah,
out dancing and getting,
got a few things to say on that one, but yeah,
yeah. But do you know what? When she came up to the camera to be interviewed about it, it was like, yeah, and what's wrong with
I
dancing? Is
know.
that wrong? And I was like, oh, good for you. Yeah,
But it's true. Yeah,
the attitude is not uh, choreographed. It's
mm,
natural. It's who they are, and it's the clarity of how they see things. Where you
yeah,
see in the UK, at least, our politicians, it really bugs me how you can see how they've been trained to within an inch of their life. They all have this way. Have you seen it where they hold their hands in a certain way?
yeah.
Normally, I would imagine 20 years ago, they would be pointing when they're making a point, and everyone's like, oh, no, you can't point now. That's rude. So they tuck that finger away, and their
Over a
thumb
pound.
fits over the index finger to hold onto it.
Yeah,
So now they're pointing their thumb as they're trying to make a point. And it's like, that's so unnatural. Nobody does that in the real world. Just put your hand down. Don't
because they've
make
trained
a
them,
point.
haven't they? Like that means it's the trust, it's the power, it's the influence, it's all of that
Exactly.
kind of stuff. And it's just
Ah.
like, no, no, no.
So for me, my leaders, as you say, Simon Sinek and what he does, although I still think there's bits that he misses. So Simon, if you want to get in
Yeah,
touch, I'll fill you in on those.
I can sort you out.
Give you something to think about. Yeah. Can I come on your podcast, Simon? I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but people like natural born leaders that emerge rather than
Mm,
ones that drive themselves forward for leadership. So a politician is like, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. Where
hmm.
people like Maya Angelou,
Yeah,
just wisdom incarnate, and what a loss she is to the world with how she saw life. Same with Mother Teresa. She said, I would never go on a anti-war rally, but I will go on a peace march.
mm,
Same difference, but such a big, profound difference in that let's not
yeah,
talk about war, let's talk about peace.
I
Let's go
think,
for the
yeah,
solution and not look at the problem. What could we do? I wonder, what if all the countries of Europe decided to walk from wherever they are to Russia and said, could you not fight anymore, Mr. Putin, please, because we just want peace? I wonder how that would go. We're now in a self-organizing world, the Me
mm,
Too movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and we get, people are rallied and they come together for wonderful causes. And yet the war, we're going back to old school thinking and let's throw money at the problem because let's just give him more weapons because that's, it's good for our economy because we can sell more guns. That's okay. We'll do that. And it just seems that the clarity of thought is not there because of apparently one person. I think there's probably more to it than just one person, has decided to invade another country for whatever reason. It
yeah.
just doesn't ring true. I'm going off piste here.
No, but
Let me
you're
go
right.
back.
I often think about that, and I'm just like, how does how does he get away with doing that? Like, it's almost like, again, if we bring it back to sort of work situations or business situations, and you get like one person that insists on bullying everyone, and it's
Yes.
like everyone is like caught up in this bully, and it's like, but there's 20 of us. How
Yes.
are you scared of that? How does this one person get to manipulate everyone? Like,
Mm,
no. So as you said, it's like all of these countries. What is it? What's going on that we can't stop this one person?
yeah.
What is it?
there's more to it than meets the eye, I would imagine,
Yes.
and I'm not gonna go down conspiracy theory route, but, it's money is the root of all evil. I think that's probably something to do with it. But I heard, and I don't know how true this is today because I haven't verified it, that he's invaded Lithuania as well.
What?
So he's not sticking to just Ukraine, but that might not be true, so don't go and,
Yeah.
if you're listening to this, go and have a Google, and hopefully I'm wrong. But that's an email I saw about an hour ago, but I've not verified it at all. So hopefully not. Hopefully it's not the case. But yeah, it's just. Do you remember? Have you ever seen? Not Game of Thrones, Hunger Games. There
Yes.
was it three movies, and at the end, it was of all the areas, the zones that they had, they all came together and they marched on the capital, and they knew that people were going to get killed, but they just, in their efforts, they just sort of bombarded and decided that enough was enough. And what's really tragic is that in a movie or fiction, the symbol was to hold, I think it was three fingers up or two fingers up as a sign of solidarity. And that sign has been adopted over in Myanmar, with all the atrocious things that are going on over there that nobody hears about, which is, why? What the humanitarian genocide that is going on, with the people over there, and how, people are surviving on the bare necessities, and we don't hear about it. And I only hear about it because one of my best friends is Burmese, and it's just such a wicked state of affairs. And that's how they smuggle out photographs and video in order to see this symbol that's going on. So it's like, in other words, help. We need help desperately. And governments around. What's the United Nations doing? I don't know. They obviously haven't got enough
Mm.
value in order, maybe, have we're going into political realms here and global domination, but it gets you an idea that if we are now, as a nation here and as business coaches across the world, coming to the realization that the leadership we currently have is not fit for today's world, how long is it going to take before the world's leaders catch up with business leaders
Yeah,
to understand there's
exactly.
a better way of doing things?
Mm. Yeah, no, exactly. And it's the models, like you said, that kind of hold us to ransom, and thinking of workplaces and the templates that we still use. And
Mm,
that's what's kind of in conflict, isn't it? And that's what's sort of burning us out. But I think that's also a little bit what COVID started to sort of help us to explore and almost pull together the cracks. But then in some ways, there are also people that are still desperate to stick to that. And they're clinging
yes,
on to those identities and
it's what they
don't let
know.
like don't take it away from me, please.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to find the way to
Can you
change.
imagine if we went into a company and we looked at their, how's it laid out in your company, and they gave you a hierarchy chart, and it's like, well, this one person at the top is in charge of those four, and those four are in charge of those 16, and those 16 are in charge of. I said, well, okay, let's change that. How about if we have self-organizing community and you're all responsible to each other and you all co-create? And they would be, wow, what's going on? The buck's got to stop somewhere. Well, yes, I get that. But there are easier ways of making sure that everyone becomes responsible for their little part of the picture. I often quote, and everyone's probably, if you're listening to this podcast on a regular basis, I'm going to say it again. Ricardo Semler, go and find his TED talk. And he talks about, he's been doing this for 30, 40 years now, where his staff are able to choose what office they go and work in. This is, pre-pandemic. He's been doing this for donkey's years, decades. They choose where they want to work. They choose how much time they have off, how much annual leave they have. They choose their salary. And they do it by looking at what other people are doing. So, and also they're encouraged that if they're on a project and they finish the project early, they take the rest of the week off. So they're encouraged to finish rather than go, oh, well, I'll make it last because I don't want to do another
Drag it
project yet.
out.
So I'll drag it out. Exactly. So there are bonuses around those kind of things as well. And it's like, how refreshing to see what everybody else earns in the company and choose, well, I do almost the same as him, but I do a bit more than that person. So I'm going to put myself somewhere in the middle of that salary. And I can see on the accounts that there is a budget for that. So if I take that much, that's fair.
Mm.
How wonderful is that? Rather than when I was at work, when I was employed, and well, I am unemployable now, I think, if I wasn't my own boss. So I used to work for local government, and I was told without exception, you do not discuss your salary to any other person in the office. It's not allowed. Why not? It just isn't. Why not? Because we don't do that here. It says in your contract you're not allowed to. I don't think it does. I've looked at my contract. It doesn't say that. Why can't we? No,
There's no gagging order.
exactly. And they were furious with me. So it's me and 35 men, and the boss was trying. I was the one that he had problems controlling. And there was a self-assertiveness course for people to go on. I was told I wasn't allowed to go on it
This is
because
too assertive.
I was bossy enough already, apparently. Now, this is back in the day. So I'm talking 1980, probably early 80s. And hopefully, if I were to go back to that department, it would have changed drastically. But at the time, it was in my head was like, what is wrong with these people? It just didn't seem right to not be able to be collaborative with your colleagues and work together and help each other. And the only time I was ever encouraged to work with my colleague was to rig the system. We had to fill out a form for your mileage that you did every month. And I was told how to do it so that other people, because I wrote it out the first time, and they went, no, you can't send that in, because this guy who's doesn't have to do so many journeys as you is already claiming X amount, and you're trying to claim half of that, so his would be cut out as well, so you've got to charge more. So I had to do a fictitious mileage claim in order for Freddie over there not to lose out on his money that it was totally rigged the whole way. And I still think nowadays in governmental departments that is the culture, and there's probably hand over fist money being wasted in silly little things like that, because people feel that, well, I'm not being paid a decent wage, so I might as well get
Well,
it.
let me just claim mine. It's just, I think and you made me think of a point kind of earlier on as well when we're talking about being self-employed and employed and kind of our whole attitude of going into business. And it's about being affording the same respect to people that you would expect back. So you're a business owner, if you're employed, have and again that point as well, having that same respect for someone else that you'd want others to have with you.
Mm,
And again, remember a recent situation kind of someone who was developing and growing a business and they were working within an organization, but they were doing things in a way that was disrespectful to the business that they were in. So in terms of, oh, I've got my own business, I don't need to be concentrating on you,
wow.
and all
Yeah.
of that stuff. And it's like, would you want someone, if they were working for you, to behave the same way? No, you wouldn't. And I remember there was a conversation around that with the individual, and it was like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Because they were just kind of like, well, this is my business. I got to do my business. And it's like, but when you're here, you're being paid here.
Hmm.
You respect here. And it's that kind of thing, isn't it, as well, in terms of, if we talk about karma and stuff,
Yeah.
the thing that you put out is what you want from other people. Like, you can't say you want people to buy into what you have and you're the disrespectful person. So I think, again, a lot of business owners and us, we do talk about being unemployable and all of that. But I think you
Mm,
have to be almost the example and the epitome of what a good employee almost is, because
yeah.
that's leadership as well, and that's mirroring, and that's what we want for other people. But yeah, it just reminded me of that little story
That's
and
a really
others.
good point, and I've worked with those kind of people as well, so it brought back a few memories for me too. It's interesting that they just think that they can stripe the company up, don't they?
It's just like, no, you can't do that.
But this, like you say, mirroring what you'd expect a good leader to be. This is the phrase at the moment, isn't it? The servant leader.
Yeah.
And again, going back to Simon Sinek, his book was "Leaders Eat Last."
Mm.
And it doesn't mean to say you become a doormat for them, and it doesn't mean to say that you solve all of their problems. You know the old story about somebody comes to you and they've got a monkey, a problem, and the minute they put their hand on your shoulder to say, "Can you help me?" and you go, "How? What can I do? How can I help?" The monkey's half on your shoulders already. And then they go, "Oh, thanks so much for your help. I'm so glad you're looking after this." And they disappear. And hang on a minute, I've got this problem in my lap. That's not what good leadership is. Leadership is enabling the other person. So to be the servant leader, it's about teaching. And again, this is stuff that we have known for hundreds of years, because who is the servant leader? Jesus. You know, if you go back to a religious tone, and I'm sure Muhammad was as well, it's these teaching spaces where once we are taught, we can then go and teach other people. Once we understand the power of the things that we're being taught, we can go and share it. And it is about leaders eat last, because it's like, have you got everything you need? Have you got everything you need? Have you got everything you need? And then, okay, now I can go and I can do my thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it just, I think that's the world we're walking into. But I think there are, as you say, some people that are going kicking and screaming.
And
Um,
we have to drag them to
yeah,
change because they don't want. And again, going back to that point that I said earlier on with the kicking and screaming, you've got the ones that think that, and I've certainly come across it, if you're behaving like this, that means you're stupid and I can like, and now it's my power. And
yeah.
it's like, no. And as I said, you have to sort of just go, no, calm down, little person. No. Like,
Get
just
back in
because
your
I don't
pram.
shout at you, just because I'm not that old school kind of mentality of what leadership is, doesn't mean I've lost my brain. I haven't, misplaced my brain somewhere.
Yeah,
You're making, I think that thing of we're making decisions and choices, we're breathing, we're taking pauses, we're reflecting. We don't need to be speaking all the time. And
yeah,
because you're doing that doesn't mean I am less, I've got less brains or I am less in control or I'm less of a leader than you that thinks that they need to like talk all the time. Like, so it is that, isn't it? It's changing that dynamic, changing what we look at and what we've called leadership and just yeah, that total kind of toxic way.
can I throw the cat among the pigeons?
Yeah,
Um, do you think that leadership has gone the way it's gone because historically it's been a masculine endeavor, and now fortunately there are more women in the workplace and in leadership roles? Do you think that's an influence on how it's changing?
I think it's definitely got part of it, and masculine in terms of what we view as masculine traits,
Mm,
and the people that like to operate in particular ways. So, like we said, it was very much about speak loudly, shout, prove, ego.
mm,
Like that was how it was, and everyone kind of, who shouted louder, kind of was the one. Obviously, like we said, we've got men in physical bodies that do have those other traits of listening, of kind
mm,
of all of the weighing up. But it was, and equally there are people in, female presenting bodies that have those traits as well. So it's more about, I think, the as you said, the traits, the tendencies, the characteristics, but also I think where we have valued people who have been presenting in terms of extroverts. I
yes.
think that is the thing as well. So it's just about shouting, it's not about reflecting, it's not about pausing. So we don't value, or we haven't valued those characteristics.
Mm,
And we teach people to be louder, we teach people to shout more, we teach people to compete. Now that has a place, but it's like you can't run only on that. If you have someone that's loud and goes and doesn't think and
mm,
bulldozes their way through, there'll be environments that does not work.
yeah.
Where you need someone that's calmer, that's more measured, that can have a conversation. And especially in a time of change and transition, which we are now, again, it's looking at what's appropriate for that time. And it isn't bulldozing your way through and eat like that has a place, but that right
Mm,
now in certain crisis situations
yeah.
isn't the one. So I think we need to, and we are starting to look at balance. We're starting to look at valuing emotional intelligence a lot more.
Yeah.
You know, reading people, those kind of more perceptive relationship building, rapport building, understanding people. Our focus needs to be different, and it is, but we do have a lot more work to do. And I think that's the conflict or the tension that we're at is kind of almost the old world and the new world, and then the
Mm.
reality of what we're living in. And it's how do we create kind of that harmony? Because we do need a bit of that, but also they need to work to together. And neither of them, as I said, no trait, no person is better. It's just different, and it's valuing that difference as well.
Yeah, and it's horses for courses. As you say, some places it's gonna need to be high octane, and in other places it's gotta be quiet and contemplative. Um, I also think that the next generation, coming into the areas of leadership, I mean, talking about the, PM of, Finland, she's what,
Mm.
36 or something? So,
Yeah,
I don't know if she's the youngest prime minister. I think she probably is. Um,
on the list, isn't she? Not 58
exactly.
and 9 and
Yeah.
60, and
And whilst, age does
there's
have
value.
wisdom, yeah, and it has absolute experience and value, it's not the only, values that can be, attained as well. So I think maybe the next generation coming in, as they become leaders, as they are growing on, I think they have a whole new, beautiful, wonderful outlook on life where, masculine and feminine are like, they're not attributed to male and female. They're just, a masculine equals this and feminine equals that. And it might come from a man, it might come from a woman. It has no
Yeah.
relevance around that. And also the absorption of technology. So their problems as they come along might be in face-to-face communication because they're so used to doing the old keyboard
You
warrior
can't. I
stuff.
know.
Um,
Yeah, that's
so the
causing us to
strategies
have problems.
the strategies that you work with for business growth are probably gonna, change, slowly over the years, but like I say, it's this tanker that is slowly moving. But hopefully in the right direction now, because I do think there's more people like you, who are out there understanding the value of strategic leadership, of servant leadership, and ultimately of the process of the butterfly, learning how to fly and knowing how you're going to come through and come out the other end and be stronger in the long run. On that note, Selena, we could chat all afternoon. You know, you and I could do this all the time. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts around what you do, business strategy, leadership strategy, sustainable, scalable businesses, sustainability. We didn't even touch on that. That will be part three, I
That's
think.
yeah, that's for next
Yeah,
time.
we've got to save something for another time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. If anybody wants to get hold of you, what's the easiest way for them to get in touch?
So I am on LinkedIn. I'm sure the links will be underneath. I am on
Mhm.
Facebook as well, and I am playing about a bit in Instagram, so they can find me there too.
Have you got a website they can go to?
That is in development, changing a few things, but those sort of social media links are probably my best.
Lovely. And on a regular basis, you can find Selena popping into the Collaboration Global guest meetings. If you fancy coming along to that, you can find the booking link on our website, which is collaborationglobal.org, or go and search for us, Collaboration Global, on Eventbrite, and you'll find us there as well. So this has been Selena Boshorin and Jill Tiney in conversation around leadership. Thank you again, Selena. It's been an absolute joy.
And lots of fun. Thank you.